Lee felt he had committed an unforgivable sin, so he didn't hesitate to point the gun at himself. Just yesterday, middle-aged and unemployed, Lee gathered his friends to sing late into the night. The 3 sleeping children were disturbed by the noise and couldn't sleep well. His wife, unable to bear it any longer, had no choice but to rebuke her husband in public. The crowd issued an order to send the guests away. The fleeting moment of joy. Left middle-aged and unemployed, Lee somewhat disheartened. He had nowhere to vent his bitterness, could only hastily finish the last sip of beer in his cup, casually added a couple logs to the fireplace, and fobbed his wife off to go out, hurrying to the supermarket in town to buy alcohol to relieve his fatigue. On the way, Lee recalled he seemed to have forgotten to close the fire guard, but he optimistically thought, as long as he quickened his pace, there wouldn't be any problems because tomorrow's alcohol and the diapers he had to buy to change for his youngest son held an equally important position in Lee's heart. The round trip from home to town took 20 minutes, but when Lee returned, the scene before his eyes made him instantly collapse because the fire guard he forgot to put back. A raging fire had already engulfed his home. His wife, who was devastated, was rescued by firefighters, but the 3 children and he who stood here were trapped in the towering flames at this moment, turned into flying ashes, shattered into irreparable fragments. Until daytime, this blaze that devoured everything was finally quelled. His wife, overwhelmed by grief, was rushed into an ambulance before leaving. She mustered the last of her strength to tell Lee she didn't want to see him ever again. Lee didn't know how to respond. In his view, he was indeed the original sin of this disaster. If he hadn't wanted to drink more, if he hadn't been overly optimistic, perhaps none of this would have happened. But before he could emerge from the grief of losing his loved ones, the firefighters brought grave news from the ruins. 2 black fire-resistant bags contained his deeply loved 2 daughters, and his youngest son, Xiaobao, had been devoured by the flames, not even leaving a piece of remains. Due to copyright issues, I can only show you up to here, but if you're interested, you can check out the original film. The movie is called Manchester by the Sea.